If you want to know what the March Cardano 360 was all about, but don't have 2 hours to spare, you can't afford to miss this video. Welcome to the Ada from Africa overview of the March 360 event. The way we're going to tackle the vast information that was given in this most recent event is by breaking it down into 4 key concepts, these being universality, development, decentralization, and community engagement. But before we move forward, give this video a like and subscribe by smashing up that bell button. Cool, let's get cracking. So when looking at the idea of universality, the key driving force behind this is runtime verification, which is headed up by a computer scientist named Grigori Russo. Now, if you look this guy up on Wikipedia, you can see he's got some really impressive credentials with working at Microsoft Research as well as NASA. And also, he's most famously known for developing the K framework, which is integral to his involvement in Cardano. Grigori talked about how they are working towards developing the Cardano blockchain to allow plug-and-play functionality for multiple programming languages, as well as allowing smart contract functionality for these multitude of programming languages. They look to do this by utilizing 3 things, which is the K framework, an LLVM, low-level virtual machine, and IELE, I-E-L-E, which is also a low-level virtual machine, but it allows for smart contract capability. If you want to get more information about IELE and how this new virtual machine is proposed to work, I would suggest looking up Runtime Verification's website and checking out their blog postings such as this one, IELE, a new virtual machine for the blockchain. Next, Grigori goes through the project description, starting with the first version, which uses implementation of IELE backend for LLVM, support for languages that translate to LLVM, like C and C++, although there are no library support at this point. Next, he goes into community involvement. So at this stage, because this is a long-term project, the community will need to be involved. Also, there'll be support for other languages without LLVM front ends. And then the view is for library support to be added on a by-need basis, mostly by the community. Next is the research goal, which is to investigate how to use K as a smart contract language. Also, K definitions compiled to the LLVM using an existing pipeline, and translation to IELE using the new backend allows K definitions to run on the blockchain. Grigori also talked about Cardano's new extended UTXO ledger structure model. Now, you may all have heard about a UTXO ledger structure, which Bitcoin commonly uses. So from what I can tell, the basic difference between these 2 ledger models is that the extended UTXO model has support for smart contracts and native tokens. Grigori also talked about the development and utilization of Plutus being core to Cardano's success in terms of this universality, as well as the ongoing developments of domain-specific programs such as Marlow, which will be key to getting adoption from the non-programming community who want to create their own smart contracts. He also expressed 2 views on how the blockchain will function, which will be to keep the ledger small to enable fast transactions, as well as using the layer 2 as much as possible to keep fees down and a high level of security. So here we can see a breakdown of the off-chain and on-chain functions. Now, looking at the off-chain functions, which will be done on the user's computer, you can see that it comprises of a lot of computational functions like interaction with libraries, applications, compilers, as well as wallet backends. Whereas the on-chain functions, which as stated before, are going to be kept to a minimum so that we can keep the fees down and obviously the blockchain fast. And these are Plutus core, ledger interface to Plutus, and interaction with the Cardano ledger and Cardano nodes. Next, we're going to move on to the development section, which is probably where you guys are going to find the most value. So when looking at the theme of development, we're actually going to break this down further into partnerships and education. So first off, just looking at these partnerships, I mean, this is looking pretty damn amazing for a supposed ghost chain. But for our analysis in this overview, we're going to start off by focusing on the strategic partners and collaborators. If you look to the section that includes runtime verification and singularity net, these now include partners such as Obsidian, ATX Labs, and Meta Labs. Now, these are Haskell consultancy partnerships, and what their goal is for their engineers to take ideas such as use cases and any ideas that are going to bring the most impact to Cardano and work on those to try and develop those. Okay. Next we have, if you go to the top, there's Ergo and Wolfram. Now, Wolfram is an Oracle solution. I'm gathering it's Cardano's answer to Chainlink. But also interesting is Ergo. Now, Ergo is a proof of work blockchain that had its mainnet launch in 2019. It also is going to use an extended Utxo model, and their collaboration with Cardano is important because they're going to be involved in bringing a stable coin which has smart contract functionality. A very interesting development is the announcement of the RV Alpha Frontier program, which looks at the way that partnerships are going to formally launch and be verified on Cardano. So this is looked at from three perspectives. So basically you have the product, which approaches Cardano with their next-gen secure solutions. Cardano obviously provides the network, adds growth and users and devs, and raises the security bar. And then runtime verification takes care of verifying. So they formally verify the modules. So how this RV Alpha Frontier program will look to work in practice will be Cardano selects partners who are looking to bring applications and products that have the biggest and fastest impact on Cardano, likes of Oracle's, DEXs, and lending. Next, they agree a joint strategy in terms of marketing, auditing, and testing, as well as launch plans. Following that, Runtime Verification does a new audit, creates formal model of business logic, and verifies code using K-framework semantics and tools. And then lastly, the product receives certification and goes live. I don't know about you, but that looks pretty much the most sensible way of doing things to me. Next, I'm going to hand you over to Lars, who heads up the Plutus Pioneer program. And he and his team are going to do a little demo of a DApp that they've created.
And I've always been interested or fascinated by this idea of decentralized exchanges, like this Uniswap idea to completely permissionless, decentralized liquidity pools where you can swap one token against the other and the price discovery is completely automatic. So I thought it would be a nice proof of concept to implement that or re-implement that in Plutus. And it was actually quite successful. So, I mean, like anybody else, I was struggling a bit with the tooling in the beginning, but the Plutus itself, I mean, it's beautifully easy to do something like that. And I managed to replicate all the important parts. I mean, liquidity pools, liquidity tokens, swapping of tokens, creating several pools and so on. I mean, some fancy features are still missing, but that is just a matter of time. And yeah, we managed to get a demo working and even created a nice little UI for it.
After years of work, I'm honored to be able to demo the first app running on Plutus smart contracts. So what I have here is the Plutus application backend that is running for wallets. I'm mainly going to use Wallet 1 to provide liquidity to a liquidity pool, and Wallet 3 to actually use that liquidity to swap one token to another. What we can see here is the 4 wallets that are running. I'm going to focus on wallet 3 because I want to convert ADA to token A. So wallet 3 has 1 million tokens of type A, B, C, and D. And after the demo, what we want to have is we want to see this million tokens increased by the number of tokens that we swap from ADA to that particular token. So if we go to the UI is basically going to call the Bluetooth application backend. And since those are running on the same machine right now, the request is going to be very fast. But when we have the Bluetooth application backend that is interacting with the node, it's going to be a bit slower because then we need to also wait for the network to get to consensus and for the transaction to actually be propagated. Now, let's swap 100 ADA to AGI. And you can see here that my balance did update. Now, what we want to do is we want to check whether wallet 3 state did change from 1 million token A to 1 million and something token A. So basically, since we did convert like 100, it should be 500 more. So I have some scripts ready that I can use. So the first one that we need to run is get balance, which is basically gonna just get the funds of that particular wallet. It's gonna be stored in memory. And the next thing that we want to do is actually take that state from in memory and write it down to a file. Let's run get balance. So it went through, we got an empty array back. This means that the request was successful. And let's see what the query script does, which basically is just taking the state and it's outputting that into output JSON file. Currently we have no files. We should see like a file called output.json once we execute this command. So let's do that. And we can see output.json, and output.json was generated basically now. So if we go to output.json, we can see that the balance was increased from 1 million to 1,498,000. And we're missing 2 AGI, mainly because there is some slippage involved when using liquidity pools. Now, let's try to convert another 100 ADA. And let's do the same and let's see whether it actually changes. We need to do get balance again, and then we need to actually output that into a file again. Let's see whether the file was changed. Yeah, the file was changed, but now let's see whether the state did change, and as you can see, the state did change again. So yeah, I'm so happy to actually be able to demo this, mainly because this is just the beginning. In fact, some of the logic that was written for this demo was written yesterday, and I spent like most of the night actually trying to get to this. Thanks, and yeah, I hope to see many developers actually interacting with the Bluetooth application backend in a similar way and building great apps for the ecosystem. Thanks, bye.
Great demonstration there from Lars and his team. And this brings us nicely over to how Cardano is utilizing education in order to further its development. So the key focus here is the Plutus Pioneer program. Now, they've been involved in doing extended Haskell course training that's taken place in Athens, Ethiopia, Barbados, and most recently Mongolia. The Plutus Pioneer program is open to anyone with or without developer experience. Once enrolled in this program, they'll be trained to use Haskell and Plutus, and those who make it through the entire program will then be involved in application builds and development of proof of concept. So another key to this is the idea of having 2 teams, one to make it and one to break it. So as I previously mentioned, with the strategic partners, specifically the Haskell consultancy partners, they would effectively be Team A, the ones who are looking to build Cardano and build these applications. But then the Plutus pioneers would then be almost like Team B, who not only will be looking to work on use cases and things like that, but they will be tasked with looking for vulnerabilities. So essentially trying to break it. Another element to the education process is going to be the release of an ebook called Mastering Cardano, which is going to be produced by Jim Caldwell, who's a professor of computer science at Wyoming University. This is to be the definitive guide to Cardano, in much the same vein as Mastering Bitcoin and Mastering Ethereum were great resources for those two cryptocurrencies. This is likely to be released within about 6 months' time, but unfortunately, Jim couldn't commit to this. Finally, it's time to talk roadmap, and I bet you've all been waiting for this. So rather than butcher the crap out of this, I'm just going to hand this over to the man, the myth, the legend, who is Charles Hoskinson.
Talk about that. So here is what you all have been waiting for, the money shot. This is a roadmap of the next few months of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we had to clear Shelley and get ourselves on a new code base. And then we told everybody that Goguen would be a series of HFC events. And the first one was last year. And that HFC event was about bringing metadata and some structural improvements to basically get us set up to then bring in multi-asset, which was Mary in March. And now we are heading towards what's called the Alonzo phase. And so what Alonzo does is it takes this foundation, extended to Utxo, which is partially already in the code base, and adds it all in, and then puts this beautiful Plutus platform on top of Cardano. Okay. And here's kind of a timeline of how that works. So first off, it has to be integrated into the ledger and node code. That's the heart of Cardano. Then the wallet sits on top of it, then Daedalus. Okay. So what's occurring right now, all throughout March and all throughout April, is that integration into the node to get a CLI. Now, as that integration is happening, sprint by sprint, partners are being brought in. And these are alpha partners, so they're very close and deep and core to the company. There's about 12 of them in our constellation, and they're running lots of acceptance criteria and tests and other things. Okay. Then after that happens, we'll be able to, at the end of April, early May, to launch an Alonzo testnet, which means for the first time ever publicly, people will be able to write smart contracts. And deploy them on Cardano, Plutus smart contracts, and use the Plutus platform. Now, this is a iterative process, and it's one where the experience improves step by step, week by week. And what we're doing is we've been focused a lot on bringing two large cohorts of people to stress test this network when we turn it on. So the first cohort are professional development firms, and we went to more than 10, and it looks like we're going to pick the top 5, and you'll be meeting some of those partners today. I think they may have already presented, and those partners are basically going to write a collection of test contracts and test scenarios and go and try to build some stuff like NFT marketplaces and take what we wrote with AgeUSD and run it and so forth. So just a huge amount of professional, systematic Plutus stress testing development to verify the resource model, to make sure the tooling is working. And what they're looking for are deficiencies. So in the Plutus application framework, they're going to be looking for, hey, there's some weird messages with the compiler, or the documentation is unclear, and so forth. But really the goal is to co-develop as a red team with the Plutus team and act as a group of critics to ensure that the overall product is improved. The second group are the Plutus pioneers. And you'll see right here the Plutus Pioneer testnet. And basically the pioneers, what they're trying to accommodate is writing actual Plutus applications that will be put into production for dApps and DeFi. We have already received interest from 1,300 people who are developers who want to be part of a Pioneer testnet. And what we're doing is we're trying to winnow that set down a little bit. And Lars is going to be running, and I believe he's already presented on that, a special class for the Pioneers testnet. And basically the idea there is that when that testnet turns on, a large group of people who have been taught how to write Plutus code for the first time can actually go and hit deploy contracts and try to break it, just like those development partners are. Now, while this is occurring, there's going to be many integrations of the Plutus framework, the application framework, into the ledger, the node, and the wallet backend. And then there'll be, in the end of May, entering into June, a huge surge of QA and user acceptance testing and so forth. Now, the goal here is to make sure that we basically get a lot of these integration issues out, because Plutus was built by an independent team in parallel to the Shelley team. And now that that's being pulled in, there's going to be some rough edges in that integration. And we don't want things like the value overflow. So how you prevent that is through things like property-based testing and quick check and these types of things, where you can actually get proofs that that kind of stuff just can't happen. Okay, so that's exactly what's going to be occurring in May and June. There's external testing from this wave of stress testing pioneers who are building interesting, cool, exciting things, and this stress testing from this wave of professional companies who are development firms all across the globe, 24/7, who are building things and beating up the network and having lots of fun with it. And the goal is that this entire process will conclude and we will be feature frozen around the end of June. Now, if that occurs, what we will do is wait 4 weeks minimum for our partners, the Coinbases, the Binances, Yoroi, all these other people who have infrastructure that needs to upgrade, test, and modernize for Alonzo before we do the Alonzo hard fork. That said, the code that you write for the testnet will be usable day one on the mainnet. Okay, so this is our preliminary view. We've had 3 separate teams of delivery people and the engineers look at these dates and look at our delivery train, look at the burn down charts, the story points, the sprint velocity, what bugbears we've come up with. So we feel fairly confident with these things. And we believe that the big surge of people hitting the network will provide a very good stress test for what we feel similar to what the the Pioneers stake pool testnet did for us back in May and June of last year when we were in the build up to Shelley. And we also, through partners, are spinning up a dedicated QA team. So in addition to having Haskell developers doing the feature and integration train, we're also going to have specialized Haskell developers who come in at a great cost to me, but that's okay. And their job is to do nothing but fix bugs or clean up some of those rough edges as the feature team keeps moving forward. So we're going to be working in parallel to make sure that bugs that are discovered during the Pioneer testnet do not disrupt the delivery of Alonzo as much as humanly possible. Now, we will have a precise date for the Hard Fork Combinator event at the end of April. But we feel very confident in this preliminary collection of monthly milestones. And you can kind of see that every month, major things are happening. So the node and the full node integration should be done at the end of April. And then we're doing the wallet backend integration, running a Pioneers testnet. We're doing QA and all this other stuff. And May is probably going to be the roughest month because that's the very beginning of the Pioneers testnet. June will be the cleanup month where we're really starting to get everything where it needs to go. We're kind of tuning things. And if we can keep the velocity we believe we have, we should be able to code freeze, feature freeze at the end of June. And at that point, it's basically working with partners like Coinbase, like Binance, like Bittrex, like the wallet manufacturers and so forth, and the custodians and all these other parties and the stake pool operators and all these other parties to make sure that they upgrade in time. And the minimum amount of time for that is 4 weeks. It can be up to 6 weeks. But if we can get a code freeze at the end of June, which we feel confident with, this would indicate that at the end of July would be the HFC event. And then we have full smart contract support, 1,000+ developers ready to go from the Pioneers program, a big wave of development firms that are doing that. And at the same time, the commercial team and the ERC20 conversion team, probably in the June timeframe, will begin the commercial activity of porting things that are already in the queue and pipeline onto the network. Now, huge amount to do, lots to think about. This is a very aggressive schedule, and we've massively scaled up resources to ensure this delivery. Basically, we're merging 2 big things together. If you look at the code base for Plutus, it's a humongous body of work, and there's a lot of theory here, and there's a lot of moving pieces, and this is going to be the first cryptocurrency that uses the extended UTXO model that was developed by Chakravarty and Wadler and the others. Okay, so we're kind of trailblazing in a certain respect. And this is a very new model for developing applications. That said, there was a relatively similar model with Ergo and their Sigma protocols and their version of extended UTXO. And so we actually took the time to write applications like a stablecoin and other such things in that world to kind of get a good sense of what the overall application writing experience is going to look like. So this is the nuts and bolts, soup to nuts of the process. At the end of April, we'll have specific dates for when that HFC is going to occur. Tentatively, we feel it's sometime in July, late July to early August, if there's a 4-week burn-in for partners, and that assumes a code freeze at the end of June. We should have really good data. If, for example, if we can get that full integration done at the end of April and we're still on this roadmap, what we thought was true with projections is true. And so that date is probably very likely. I think there's a greater than 70%, 80% chance, just based on historical data we've looked at from the last 6 sprints and how things are coming together. A lot of the Plutus infrastructure is already very well tested on their side. It's just the integration of these two things. And there's a lot of little things that are going to happen during that integration. And as always, there's API changes. As always, there's format changes. As always, there's bugbears and other such things. And integration is very difficult when you take independent systems and you pull them together. So we can't give you 100% certainty, but this is very similar to what occurred with the Byron reboot in the Shelley. And the fact that we have such an aggressive testing program, which I think is probably the best in the history of the industry, gives me a lot of confidence that we're going to get there quickly. Part of the scoping is also documentation improvement. And I believe Jim Caldwell is talking about mastering Cardano. That textbook, we're also working on Plutus tutorials and so forth. The point of the Plutus Pioneers program is to train a large cohort of people. In addition to training them, we're also going to be listening. And the end goal is to make sure that we have extensive documentation for how to build canonical applications and design patterns, how to use all the interfaces, how to use everything in the standard development kit, and so forth. That will continue beyond May and June. We'll keep working on it. And in July, August, September, the coming months, we'll keep adding. So launch is not the end, it's just the beginning in a certain respect.
Solid and transparent update there from Charles on the roadmap. Although, in terms of the smart contract timeframe, probably not what everyone wanted to hear. Before we move on to the next section, here's a quick message from us here at Ada from Africa about staking.
Staking with Ada from Africa not only earns you interest on the Ada in your wallet, it also directly benefits local businesses and charities run by Africans in Africa. We pledge 10% of our own proceeds to go to these 2 foundations. Zim Kids are a grassroots organization and are completely Zimbabwean-led in the field. They have developed a strategy for helping families stay together despite the death of parents, illness, and homelessness. Zim Kids works with the whole family, helping them to learn to get themselves out of poverty. The IAPF founded Akashinga, Nature Protected by Women, a program that has already grown to over 170 employees, becoming the only group of nature reserves in the world to be protected by women. The goal is to employ 1,000 women by 2025, and we want to help them achieve just that. Between these 2 foundations, child protection, food security, empowerment of women, and wildlife conservancy are all covered. We give to these charities personally and would love to increase our contributions with every Ada staked with us. Our stake pool is operated, monitored, and protected by Zimbabwean experts that have more than 20 years experience in protecting digital assets. Our geo-redundant relay network ensures 99.99% uptime for minting new Ada in Africa. Don't delay. Stake with Ada from Africa right away.
So when considering the decentralization update of the Cardano 360, the key takeaways from here were the D parameter will be hitting 0 at the 31st of March. And this is an indication of when the network becomes fully decentralized. So that's a great step forward. Next, they talk about the three fundamentals of decentralization with a focus on network. And the key takeaway there is that in order to be a fully decentralized network, it's essential that we have a peer-to-peer network. Next is block production. And part of block production was they talked a bit about how in the early stages, the blocks were produced by federated nodes, and then it moved to a sort of hybrid status where there was, which I think we're currently in now, where there were federated nodes as well as the stake pool operators who were producing blocks. So the ideal goal is to move to a fully automated block production system where the blocks are purely being produced by the stake pool operators, and this encourages total decentralization as well. And then the next section here is governance. So governance is needed in order to manage, update, and improve proposals in a way that involves fair and inclusive voting by its users. So decentralized, fully democratic, and community led and based, I guess. So here we have the peer-to-peer roadmap, with step 1 being an internal peer-to-peer testnet coming in early Q2. Step 2 being an invite-only and public peer-to-peer testnet for stake pool operators. And this includes test integration, gathering feedback, adding features. Step 3 is a partial mainnet deployment for stake pool operators and includes automation. Step 4 is full mainnet deployment, which comprises of gossip. Step 5 is a staged migration to full deployment, which includes Ouroboros Genesis and development in parallel. When considering community engagement, the first metric to be considered is adoption. So here we can see that Project Catalyst's most recent update shows that they now have active contributing members in 104 countries. Now, the importance of this is that those people who are engaging with Project Catalyst are either the ones who are proposing projects and ideas to be put forward, or they are the ones that are voting on those projects and ideas which they want put forward. The second metric, which ties directly into engagement, is the growth in platform membership. And most noticeable is the red line on the graph, which shows the increase in membership of the Idea Scale platform. Now, the relevance of this is that in order to propose a project or idea, you have to sign up to Idea Scale as the first step of doing this. So that just shows that there's been exponential growth in terms of people wanting to be involved with Cardano and obviously putting forward projects. The last piece of the puzzle, which facilitates the community's engagement in driving Cardano's innovation, is obviously funding. Now here we can see Project Catalyst's most recent update on the funding available for projects, which currently sits at just over $400 million. So clearly funding is not a hurdle, in my view anyway. Part of the update from Project Catalyst was showcasing 2 projects which have gone through the process of seeking funding through to implementation. The first being Ada Pulse, which is an independent digital media organization whose focus is on highlighting new projects and news within the Cardano community. The next is Gimba Labs, whose mission, or who they are, is a collaborative platform for people who want to show the world what Cardano can do. And they've got some interesting things on their website which you might find useful. So if you go to their quick links, they have things like a Cardano starter kit, and they're also doing something interesting with transaction metadata. Like I say, give these websites a look and you might find some interesting stuff. Overview useful, and you want to see more videos like this, we'll be doing one of these after every Cardano 360 event, and we'll also be doing weekly news updates. So thanks for joining us and catch you later. Cheers.